Hey everyone, Miss B. Hanley here, and today we're here to talk about the hero's journey. This video is a little bit longer than my others, so for reference, I have put timestamps down in the description if you want to jump ahead to the different parts of the hero's journey. In the other myth and legends videos, we talked about the oral tradition and archetypes and archetypal patterns. So we learned about how characters can be archetypes and fit a certain mold within a narrative. Today, we're going to talk about the hero's journey, which is an archetypal narrative pattern. So I explained how most stories fit some kind of narrative pattern or plot structure. The hero's journey expresses the narrative of a particular character within the story, the hero. The hero's journey was originally coined by the author and scholar Joseph Campbell, and he wrote about it in his book, The Hero with 1,000 Faces, which I have, and I talked about in the previous Myth and Legends video. A Hero with 1,000 Faces goes over more of his theories into narratology and archetypal patterns, but I'm mainly focusing on the specific archetype of pattern that he talks about, which is the hero's journey. So just like Carl Jung, Joseph Campbell had a lot of ideas regarding the human experience. So while his ideas apply mainly to fiction, literature, and narrative, the idea of the journey of the hero can be applied to one's own life. Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell both worked with Sigmund Freud, which is what makes his theory so relevant to the human psychology. It's not particularly my background, so we're going to be focusing more on the hero's journey as it applies to literature and more contemporary cultural narratives. When Joseph Campbell writes about the hero's journey, he also calls it the monomyth, which is a way of saying one myth or a common myth amongst all humans. This archetypal pattern is a common template for a broad category of tales and lore that involve a hero setting out on an adventure in a decisive crisis and wins a victory to return home changed and transformed. The Hero with 1,000 Faces details the hero's journey as broken up into 3 parts. Each of those 3 parts are then broken up into their own particular segments. So the first section of the hero's journey that Campbell details is known as the departure. The very first part of the departure in the hero's journey is known as the call to adventure. If you were comparing this to a standard plot map, this might also be known as the inciting incident or the turning point of the story. So before the hero actually goes on their adventure, you have to establish their status quo. A character's status quo is essentially their current state of affairs, and most of the time the status quo isn't a perfect one. There may be some kind of conflict involved that the character is already struggling with or that's holding them down in this normal status quo. The call to adventure is where the moment the hero realizes that there's another opportunity outside of their status quo. In The Hero with 1,000 Faces, Joseph Campbell writes, "This first stage of the mythological journey, which we have designated the call to adventure, signifies that destiny has summoned the hero and transferred his spiritual center of gravity from within the pale of his society to a zone unknown." Joseph Campbell continues to explain that it's meant to lure the hero away from their ordinary world into one of extraordinary. The second part of the departure is the refusal of the call. Although the hero may be called to an adventure more exciting than they could ever imagine, the hero can at first be hesitant to enter that extraordinary world. This comes with the refusal of the call. At this point in the hero's journey, they're still young and somewhat naive. They may want to cling to the world of the known and comfortable and not have to experience what is unknown. Regardless of the refusal, the hero goes on their journey, and the next step is with supernatural aid. Because the hero is entering a world unknown to them, the supernatural aid is essentially a guide or a useful tool that helps the hero in this new world. After the hero gets their supernatural aid, it's time to cross the first threshold. This is the part of the hero's journey where the hero enters the unknown world for the first time. Joseph Campbell states that it is with this experience that the hero begins to undergo their first change. The experience with the unknown has an internal effect on the hero, and Joseph Campbell calls this the release of the ego. Ego is another one of those psychological terms that comes from Sigmund Freud. Your ego is basically the person that you are when you know people are watching. When it comes to crossing this first threshold, the hero is releasing that and starting to uncover their true selves. Joseph Campbell states, "As the rising smoke of an offering through the sun door, so goes the hero, released from ego, through the walls of the world." The last part of the departure is known as the belly of the whale. Joseph Campbell connects this term with a lot of mythological and religious stories. But he also connects this part of the hero's journey with a symbol of rebirth. He states, "The idea that the passage of the magical threshold is a transit into a sphere of rebirth is symbolized in the worldwide womb image of the belly of the whale. The hero, instead of conquering or consolating the power of the threshold, is swallowed into the unknown and would appear to have died." This could be a part of the story where the hero experiences their first big obstacle or something that they're unable to understand or control. It would appear as if they've killed their former selves and been reborn in this new unknown world. The next section in the hero's journey is known as the initiation. So now the hero is in the unknown world. They've gotten their supernatural aid and crossed the first threshold and been reborn into their new life in this unknown world. The first part of the initiation is known as the road of trials. You can think of this part of the hero's journey as the hero being presented with many tasks and obstacles, but being able to overcome them through their supernatural aid or through the help of other characters in the story. The road of trials is meant to test all aspects of the hero's character. At the end of this chapter, Joseph Campbell writes, "The original departure into the land of trials represented only the beginning of the long and really perilous path of initiatory conquests and moments of illumination." Meaning that these trials are only going to get harder and more complicated. The next part of the initiation is the meeting with the goddess. The goddess is meant to represent all of the positive aspects of the feminine ideal. Joseph Campbell calls her the incarnation of the promise of perfection. The soul's assurance that at the conclusion of its exile in a world of organized inadequacies, the bliss that once was known will be known again. So the goddess is meant to represent a figure of comfort for the hero, able to connect more emotionally with the new aspects of this unknown world. Joseph Campbell also writes about the woman as temptress. After the meeting with the goddess, where the hero is presented with the perfection of the woman ideal, he is then presented with a female figure that is less than ideal. This is the moment that the hero realizes that the unknown world is not perfect. I like to think of this part of the hero's journey where the hero begins to break down their inherent prejudices and understand their new role in this unknown world. The next part of the initiation is known as atonement with the Father. This part of the hero's journey is meant to represent a coming to balance between the goddess figure and the father or male figure. The hero is able to accept both sides of themselves and find balance within them. Joseph Campbell says this about the atonement with the Father. "He is the twice born. He has become himself the Father. He is competent, consequently, now to enact himself the role of the initiator, the guide, the sun door, through whom one may pass. So the hero has leveled up to the point where they've become master of the unknown world. The next part of the initiation is known as apotheosis. If you're comparing it to a standard plot map, this would be the climax of the story. Apotheosis means the highest point in the development of something. So this is the part of the story where the hero has become master of the world and displayed their mastery of the world through the conflict of the story. Joseph Campbell connects this part of the hero's journey to a lot of religious and mythological texts that involve the hero reaching a certain kind of higher level or state of being. It is with this apotheosis or demonstration of their higher level that the hero achieves the ultimate boon. This is essentially the prize at the end of the dungeon. This is what the hero gains after completing their trials and obstacles through the unknown world. The last part of the hero's journey is known as the return. Now, this is obviously the section of the story where the hero comes back to their original world to bring back the knowledge of the unknown. So the first part of the return is known as the refusal of the return. The hero has become master of this new world. Why would they want to go back? But it is with the understanding that the hero must return to their original world to share the knowledge with their people. The next part in the return is known as the magic flight. Just like it was difficult to enter the unknown, it will be difficult to return. So the first thing that the hero gets is the magic flight from their supernatural patron or aid that they got at the beginning of the story. The hero will also need, though, rescue from without. Joseph Campbell says, "The hero may have to be brought back from his supernatural adventure by assistance from without. That is to say, the world may have to come and get him." The next part of the return is the crossing of the return threshold. With the help of the supernatural aid and the assistance of their known world, they're able to cross the final threshold to return to their original world. It is the moment when the hero leaves their new world to return to their old and share the knowledge they have gained. The last part of the return is the master of the two worlds, the demonstration that the hero is able to master both the known and the unknown, and able to help future heroes on their journey as well. The last part of the return is the freedom to live. You can connect this part of the hero's journey to your standard plot map by looking at the resolution. This part of the hero's journey is where the hero is able to live their life freely, knowing that they've achieved a mastery of an unknown world. This part of the hero's journey is technically the end. However, when Joseph Campbell writes about the hero's journey in his book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces, he includes the hero's journey in a map. You'll notice that the map is circular. The hero's journey is cyclical, meaning that it moves as a cycle. Just because the hero's journey has ended with the hero's freedom to live doesn't mean that there won't be another call to adventure somewhere down the line. The hero's journey has been used in many mythologies and religious stories, but the hero's journey has been applied to many modern narratives. In fact, George Lucas, the creator of Star Wars, actually wrote a blurb for this book that I have. "In the 3 decades since I discovered The Hero with a Thousand Faces, it has continued to fascinate and inspire me. Joseph Campbell peers through centuries and shows us that we are all connected by a basic need to hear stories and understand ourselves. As a book, it is wonderful to read, an illumination to the human condition. It is a revelation." And that's it for the hero's journey. In case you needed a recommendation to read this, it is pretty tough to get through. So if you're up for a challenge, I say go for it. I know this video was probably a little bit longer than my other ones, but the hero's journey is a very complicated subject, but a very important archetypal pattern when we look at myths and the oral tradition. I hope this helped you understand a little bit more about the hero's journey and Joseph Campbell. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments and I will try to answer them. If you want to correct me on anything that I put in the video, make sure you leave that in the comments as well. If you want to see more literature videos from me, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification icon so you know when a new video comes out. If you're one of my students or if you just want to know what's going on in our virtual classroom, follow me on social media, Instagram, Snapchat, and my website. I will put those on the screen. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in class. Bye!